I've played a lot of games in my life, and the one genre that I've always been intrigued by was the simulation genre. To me, the simulation genre is a battlefield of different companies trying their hardest to make sure that they are the most accurate and realistic representation of the concept that they are covering. Ever since the dawn of video games, we've seen companies cover topics that we never expected to see. And now I'm taking the time to make a video about my top 10 best simulation games I've played to date. Now, this idea was generated by a question from our epic community member Grey Knight, who asked if I had done my best and worst simulators yet. So that's what I'm gonna do. This is a living episode, and in a year's time, we'll check back and see if this list changes. Let's begin. As a kid, I was a huge fan of RollerCoaster Tycoon 2. It was one of the first proper games I got to work on my computer. For the most part, many of the games I had were budget games. The good ones were at my grandparents' house, so I had something to do during the summer, but at my house, it was mostly 1001 compilations of shitty, non-relevant Windows 3.1 games, educational titles like Dr. Brain, or I just played what came with Windows 98. Most of the time as 3D Space Cadet or Minesweeper, and I actually ended up being pretty damn good at Minesweeper. But one day in Walmart, I noticed RollerCoaster Tycoon 3 on the shelf. My grandmother knew that I loved RollerCoaster Tycoon 2, so she bought it for me. I didn't realize it was actually the Platinum Edition and that it had not only the baseline RollerCoaster Tycoon 3, but also 2 expansions. Also, for the first time, I could physically sit and ride the roller coasters I was creating. That was awesome! Critically underrated aspect of this. Sometimes I wish that that was a thing that existed in the older games, because not all of the sponsored roller coasters carried over. Also, there was an insane amount of customization. You could create your own textures, import your audio, your own photos. It was phenomenal. It's a shame that this was the last decent RollerCoaster Tycoon before shit hit the fan with Atari. I haven't played that many simulation games, so I had to really buckle down and think, what constitutes a simulation? Do we have to do a specific thing? Do we have to take a specific role? Or does it have to imitate the reality of something one-to-one, right? I mean, Goat Simulator is pretty fucking accurate to the shenanigans of a goat. But in the same vein, Shenmue is very much a simulation of a day in the life of some dude dealing with Asperger's. So for spot 9, I had to put a game that I spent easily hundreds of hours on, RollerCoaster Tycoon 2. It was actually my first one. As a kid, I never cared about playing games in the order of release, and when the Scholastic Book Fair rolled around at some point in my middle school years, you bet your ass I hopped on this one. I had no clue what I was getting into, but I knew I was scared of roller coasters, and I felt that if I understood how they worked, or maybe if I built my own, that maybe I could beat the phobia, right? Turns out my fear wasn't really tied to going fast or even riding a roller coaster. It was tied to the anxiety of lateral forces. Nowadays, I just squeeze my abs and fucking ride the lightning. RollerCoaster Tycoon as a franchise, at least the first 3, were all consistently fun. There were challenges, objectives, cheats, even a really badass sandbox mode. To me, this was my childhood on a computer personified, and I look forward to going back to it at some point on stream. Have you ever played Starlancer? It was created by the perpetual goonfuck Chris Roberts, the same guy who created Wing Commander. And if you've played Starlancer, you can kind of connect the dots that that game is awesome. It might even be on this list. Wink wink. But where Starlancer was more like Wing Commander, the sequel Freelancer is a lot like a watered-down Elite Dangerous. This game was actually suggested to me by my dear friend Trimmer the Wolf, a Twitch streamer. He would neuter me if I shared his channel details and probably kick me in the dick if I said go follow him, but guess what? I don't care. He's a sweetheart who's been by my side for a long time during the highs and the lows, and I think he deserves all the same love you've afforded me as a community. His information will be down below. In Freelancer, there's a plot. Basically, we play as Edison Trent, a survivor of Freeport 7's destruction. There's this evil race of aliens known as the Nomads who are capable of impersonating people, and they are actively taking the roles of political leaders, which is pretty gnarly. It's a cool story, but to me the coolest part about the game is that you can do whatever you want to do. Do you want to be a bounty hunter? You can. Do you want to be a trader or even a smuggler? You can. Do you want to be a space pirate? You can. There's an infinite expanse of places to go and things to do, and to me, this was Star Citizen long before Chris decided to screw over his investors. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but my dad was a radio DJ down in Baton Rouge, and as a little side hustle, he would whip out the virtual DJ and mix music for weddings and also my school dances, which was awesome because I had control of the music, and I felt like a mini celebrity for one night. That was always fun. But Dad was big on giving me mixes he thought were cool, and at the time I was really into EDM. So when I saw DJ Hero and the badass little turntable controller, I was hooked. I was already really big on Guitar Hero 3, so I recognized the branding, and that branding correlated with a genuine interest I had in music. And for the first time, I felt that I was the life of the party, remixing these badass songs. And even on the hardest difficulty, I felt that this game was massively forgiving, and it had badass songs too. This is a fun one. You should check it out if you get a chance. It's really immersive for what it is. The sequel was just as fun. Now this one might cause some confusion. I personally consider this a racing game, but the thing you need to know is that natively this game was in the arcades. It had a racing setup like Initial D, San Francisco Rush, or any other racing game, so by definition, it is a simulation game. Now to be fair, I played both the arcade and the Nintendo 64 version, and I would be more apt to call the Nintendo 64 game just a racing game, but growing up, I had the N64 steering wheel. So when it came to playing racing games with my friends, it was so cool to say, I have Cruis'n World at home. Not many kids could say that. Cruis'n World was so much better than Cruis'n USA, and the tracks were dope. We were going around the world listening to different music, and it was a wonderful port of a classic racing game. I actually still own my childhood copy of this, but I don't let my kids play it because my dad's ghost data is kept on it, and for the most part, this is my only tangible living memory of him, and I'd like to keep it that way. If you want to figure out someone's age, ask them if they ever played the Oregon Trail at school, and if they say yes, ask them what the game looked like. If they say a comically stupid-looking ox in a wagon moving right to left on a black background, then they've played Oregon Trail. If they remember it being yellow, then it was the second edition. I don't remember playing this in school, but I remember seeing it. My school computers mostly had Zoom Beanies, Midnight Rescue, and Dr. Brain, and obviously, of course, Math Blaster. But I have a soft spot for going back and playing this on stream. I'm actually fairly decent at it. The whole idea is that we're going from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City, Oregon, while contending with the most asinine things you can imagine. Throughout your journey, things will go wrong fairly constantly, and to me, from an education perspective, it did a great job of emulating exactly how life was on the trail. Sickness was common, people starved, and they froze. Mistakes were made, and with the trail being so unpredictable and with humanity being greedy, the events that occur are true to form. Mad props to the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium. They were known for their trail games, and they were always fun. We mentioned the sequel to this, Freelancer, but I did say that this game might be on the list. Again, the only reason I checked this out is because with my rules of release for Freelancer, I needed to play what came first. And while I knew what to expect with Freelancer based on footage, I was shocked when I saw how Starlancer was presented. It was a space shooter, a good one. It reminded me so much of Wing Commander, and that made sense because the same guy who did Wing Commander created this. We had decent squad controls, a very accurate radar targeting system, and a companion AI that wasn't dog shit. Looking at you, Wing Commander 1. To me, this was just good, clean fun, and I do hope to find more games that fit the bill for this style of gameplay. Be warned though, this game is an absolute bitch and a half to run on modern hardware, so be willing to do some patches and updates. Sometimes the sound effects won't work, but it is what it is. A while back, tons of you mentioned this game. Grissom Sun, Just Inevitable 80, VT Charlie 13, The Mid-Centrist, and Von Spider all suggested Silent Service, and for a long time, I didn't really have plans to play it, but I wanted to, because submarine simulation games were always so dope and relaxing to me. I mean, on principle it was always dope to me, but one day, Old Man Sim, who I mention quite often on this channel, changed the active company to Rare, who we all know from different parts of our childhoods. For some it might be Battletoads, Snake Rattle and Roll, or maybe it was Banjo-Kazooie or Donkey Kong 64, but way back on the NES, they also helped port Silent Service, so I had the luxury of playing it. Now, as a simulation game, it isn't inherently beatable. It's more so a game where we play until we get bored with it, or the next same idea comes out. But I was blissfully impressed by what the game was capable of doing. Our whole job is to take out every boat in our way, but we need to do it tactically. We don't have unlimited ammunition. Power is limited while submerged, and once destroyers catch wind of our existence, we do need to dodge them. And that's easier said than done. I think for an NES port of a quality PC game, this is epic, and you should check it out. It is slow, but that's okay. When we talk about simulation, the driving force is being something you will likely never be, or doing a thing that you will likely never do, and for me, Pirates by Sid Meier's achieved both of those statements at the same time. I don't wish to become a pirate, nor do I wish to sail the ocean, so to be able to do that on an NES game, a Genesis game, and on a modern PC game was awesome. For anyone who hasn't checked out the Pirates line of games, it's a phenomenal simulator from Sid Meier where we can do anything we want to do, at any time we wish to do it. We can be a trader, we can be a pirate, we can be a bounty hunter, we can woo the daughters of governors, we can even install governors if we take down the soldiers protecting the city. We can get promoted, earn land, find our missing siblings, find the ancient gold cache. There's a lot going on. And the funny thing is, there isn't really a way to beat it. It's a high score game through and through. You can easily sail into port and retire and boom, game over. The speed run is 5 seconds long. But I did put a lot of time and effort into the game, and it's one that I love going back to. If you haven't played the modern reboot of it, you should. It's dope as hell. It's not often I get to talk about the Sega CD because I haven't played that many Sega CD games, and the ones that I own, they're mostly dog shit, the weird FMV games that really didn't fare well. But Age 3 Thunderstrike, that one blew my mind. Have you ever played Desert Strike or really any of the Strike series? For those who have, you will adore this game. For those who haven't, in the Strike series, we control a helicopter from an isometric perspective, flying around and completing a series of objectives, with the last objective usually being a surprise, one that can make or break the mission. We have to manage our fuel, ammunition, and rescue people to repair our helicopter. But I always wondered what it would be like to be in the cockpit of a helicopter doing the same thing. And I was pleasantly surprised to experience that in AH3 Thunderstrike. For my European audience, you might recognize this game as Thunderhawk AH-73 Mike, and in it we fly through a few campaigns, doing the same thing we would do in the Strike series. And I like that. Believe it or not, it was made by Core Designs, yeah, the Tomb Raider fucks. I kinda wish they would have focused on more helicopter games, which to be fair they did. There are 2 more sequels to this game, Firestorm Thunderhawk 2 and Operation Phoenix. There's also another game on the Saturn that used its engine, Shellshock. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any simulation games that you love? Feel free to tell the community down below. Who knows, maybe you'll open the door for someone to create an awesome memory. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home in our community. We're a gathering of like-minded retro gaming enthusiasts that love remembering when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you align with that, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre, out.